Warm greetings from TNV Academy. Today in this session, we are going to discuss about the controls in ISO 27000 that are explained in Annex A of the standard. Before we begin, let me tell you about the various points we will be discussing during this session. During this session, we will talk about what are ISO 27001 controls, the various controls in ISO 27000, who is responsible for implementing Annex A controls, how to identify ISO 27000 security controls one should implement, and using the controls of ISO 27000. So let's begin our session and discuss what are ISO 27000 controls. ISO 27000 outlines the various controls that organizations can implement to meet the requirements of the standard to design the Information Security Management System (ISMS). While it lists all the controls in Annex A, organizations must deploy only the controls that will help mitigate the identification risks. ISO 27001 controls are the measures that organizations must take by way of policies, processes, and procedures to meet the security requirements of the standard. ISO 27000 lists its controls in Annex A. Annex A has 114 controls divided into 14 categories. An organization's response to the requirements listed against these controls will depend on its risk assessment, risk treatment plan, and specific needs, if any. Simply put, Annex A is like a table of content that lists all the security controls under ISO 27001. Organizations can pick and choose the appropriate controls and decide how they deploy them based on their risk assessment and risk treatment plan. Let us now discuss about the various controls in Annex A of ISO 27001. A5. Information Security Policies. As per the list of ISO 27001 controls here, it determines if your organization has policies to provide management direction and support for information security. The organization needs to document relevant InfoSec policies and ensure they are approved by the management, published and communicated for staff awareness and reviewed periodically. Though the domain has only 2 controls, it is perhaps the most important one as it sets the tone for the organization-wide information security standards. A6. Organization of Information Security. If A5 was about setting up the information security policies and processes, A6 is about ensuring how the policies are implemented in the organization. The Annex provides a framework for assigning security roles across the organization such that no one drops the ball while implementing the running of the ISMS. It also covers mobile devices and remote working. While a lone InfoSec officer can spearhead the policy implementation for startups or smaller organizations, it's a good practice to have a plan in place for the same as your organization grows. A7. Human resources security. Much like the human resources function, the controls in this domain are centered on information security through the 3 phases of employee's journey in an organization: before the employment, during employment, and on termination and change of employment. These include background verification and mention of InfoSec responsibilities in the terms and conditions of employment, InfoSec awareness training on the job, disciplinary processes in case of security breaches, and policies implemented to ensure data security is maintained even after employees leave the organization. A8. Assets Management. ISO 27001 Annex A controls in this domain help identify organizational assets associated with information management. They define appropriate protection responsibilities. It includes asset identification within the scope of the ISMS to its classification, confidential, restricted, internal, and public, and assess the media handling to prevent unauthorized disclosure, modification, removal, or destruction of information stored on media. A9. Assess control. In essence, in user management that defines control for the administration of login credentials, user privileges, access right, and password management systems, to name a few. It also includes access privileges of clients' applications, secure login procedures, and control access to program sources code. 8.10. Cryptography. Your organization should have a documented policy on cryptographic controls and the key management processes. The objectives of this domain is to ensure the confidentiality, integrity, and availability of information and protect it throughout. The policy should include details on the use, protection, and lifetime of cryptographic keys. E11. Physical and environmental security. The control objectives for this domain focus on protecting your organization's physical premises and preventing loss, damage, theft, or compromise of its assets and operations. It does so by line and controls to prevent unauthorized physical access, damage, and interference with the organization's ISMS. Secure your premises. Physical entry access control, protection of the environment against natural disasters, clear desk and clean screen, unattended user equipment, authorized removal of assets and their secure disposal are other areas covered in this domain. E12. Operational security. Comprising 7 subdomains, the control listed here pertain to operational procedures, defenses against malware, backups, logging and monitoring change, management, patch management, vulnerability management, and penetration test, and more. But more importantly, like anything in ISO 27001, it all needs to be documented. E13. Communication security, network security, segregation of network, secure transfer of information, confidentiality, and non-disclosure agreements are some of the critical controls in this domain. It governs how organizations protect their data in network. E13 dwells on network security management and ensures that information security, confidentiality, integrity, and availability are maintained throughout. E13.2 pertains to information on the move to a different organization's third party or customer. E14. System acquisition. Development and maintenance. The first objective of E14 is to ensure that information security is integral to information system across the entire life cycle. So, data security should remain paramount for any changes made to the information security system or when a new system replaces the existing one. The ISO 27001 controls cover the security requirements for internal system and public networks. It also includes the controls for securing the software development lifecycle (SDLC). E15. Supplier relationships. Vendor risk management is critical to managing your organization's information security management system. The ISO 27001 controls here protect your organization's assets accessible to the suppliers. Contractual agreements your organization has with its suppliers come under the purview of this domain. You must demonstrate that you also hold your supplier to strict security standard. A16. Information security incident management. This domain deals with controls that define the roles and responsibilities of employees when things go wrong. Who should be informed in the case of a breach? Who can make decisions? What are the must-does in case of a breach? The controls here detail the incident response and reporting processes in case of a security incident and require defining the corrective action after one. Learning the collective of evidence are also included here. A17. Information security aspects of business continuity management. Information security is critical and it is especially so when facing business disruption such as a natural disaster, acquisition, or political upheaval, to name a few. This domain requires the organization to have a plan of the action in such events. The first section addresses information security continuity and the second focuses on the redundancies to ensure information processing facilities availability. A18. Compliance. The last domain ensures organizations identify the relevant and applicable laws and regulations such as intellectual property rights, privacy and protection of personally identifiable information, and how they abide by them. It also includes how organizations mitigate the risk of non-compliance and penalties. So let us now discuss who is responsible for implementing Annex A controls. While the Information Security Officer or team will spearhead the implementation of controls and the organization's compliance with ISO 27001 standard, the fundamental responsibility of implementing the Annex A and controls rests on all employees. Employees are the first line by defense in a security attack. Therefore, it is a shared responsibility. Management buy-in is critical here. Therefore, the entire processes of ISO 27001 implementation rest equally on management review and approval of policies and procedures at every decisive step. So, we will now move forward and discuss how to identify ISO 27001 security controls one should implement. The identification of which controls should be implemented can only follow a robust assessment of an organization's inherent information security risk. Once the risks are understood, controls can be selected to treat them. Arguably, the more controls selected, the more likely it is that the organization can prevent or, at last, arguably, the more controls selected, the more likely it is that organization can prevent or at least minimize exposure to identified risk. However, controls from Annex A can be excluded if it is believed they are not relevant. An example of this is where an organization does not develop any software. Clearly, there would be no need for secure development policy. If a control is to be excluded, a full justification will be required to be documentation in the SOA. And finally, let us now discuss how to use Annex A controls. The controls found in Annex A of ISO 27000 are a fundamental element of risk treatment and must be selected following a thorough assessment of an organization's information security risk. Typically, selected controls must be justified by a risk assessment, business need or best practice, legal or contractual requirement. Once controls have been selected, organizations are required to produce a statement of applicability SOA, which must include as a minimum all 114 controls documented in Annex A of ISO 27001 along with the justifications for inclusions and ideally brief explanations of how they have been implemented. The SOA then serves as a mechanism for top management to have accurate information on the level risk their organizations are exposed to and the status of the risk treatment activities. So we have now come to the conclusion of this session. In case you have any queries regarding what we have discussed, then please put them in the comment section of the video and we will be really happy answering them. Till we meet next, it's best wishes from TNV Academy. Thank you.